So, good morning, members of the Public Safety Committee. My name is Richard Wasilek. I'm currently captain of the Jewett City Fire Department, which is in the town of Griswold. So, it's a borough of Griswold.
My father grew up in Rickstown, so that so I know. So.
We'll have to find out where that is later. So I've held different positions around Eastern Connecticut in different organizations. I've volunteered where I have lived in the fire departments in the towns. So I've always believed in volunteering in the town. Over the years, I've been in full-time, part-time, per diem for about 30 years now, since 1994, in emergency services. I'm currently Emergency Services Function 9 Chairman or Co-Chairman, which is Technical Search and Rescue, Fiduciary of the Emergency Services Function 8, which is Public Health. Member of the Emergency Services Function 5, which is Emergency Management. I'm also on the Eastern Connecticut Region EMS Council. I also serve as Deputy Emergency Management Director for the town of Griswold. And I've also been volunteering and working as a dispatcher for the last 30 years in different agencies, New London and Waterford, full-time. I'm here this morning to speak to you about the bill 07055, which is about stipends and not taxing volunteer firefighters for the first $2,000. So a lot of the communities that we live in now are all volunteer. The town of Griswold does not have one paid staff member in the town itself. In a neighboring town, though, in the town of Lisbon, they paid about $300,000 for part-time firefighters, which is only staffing two firefighters during the day, Monday through Friday. And they're looking to increase that this year to over $300,000 or more. The town of Griswold's stipend was $60,000 last year, and that supplemented 45 volunteer firefighters in the town of Griswold. Each volunteer firefighter got about $1,500, depending on the level of training, officer position, or volunteer firefighter, EMS. But with that, the time they had to put in, the OSHA requirements annually consisted of about 6 different courses, which took up a whole day this past Sunday. They have to obtain a minimum of Firefighter 1 or EMT. Firefighter 1 requiring 150 hours of training voluntarily. EMT up to 300 hours voluntarily. Minimum of 15 to 20% of one night during the week of training. Live structural firefighter training annually equaling over 8 hours. And of those, the members also must respond to over 20% or more of calls, emergency responses throughout the year. Now, the Jewett City Fire Department alone, in little over 1 square mile, did over 700 calls, emergency responses only. So you have to make at least 20% of those to get your stipend, on top of the training and all those hours they have to volunteer. That equals over 902 hours annually that a volunteer minimally will volunteer in their time for the fire department and the community. Put all those numbers together, and I'm trying to do my bullet point on the testimony I filed with you. That equals less than $1.50 an hour in their stipend. Not only are they paying taxes on their full-time job or part-time job, their property taxes on their vehicle, because the majority of people in Jewett City rent, they don't actually own a home, well, majority. They're actually in the hole. They're in the red when it comes to their stipend. You put it towards the hours they volunteer. That is not including also the time that their family members don't have them at home for family events, family members worrying about them getting injured during an emergency response, leaving them at dinner. My wife actually had to walk home during a thunderstorm because we had to go to a structure fire for a house hit by lightning from dinner. So all these put together, this is why I'm supporting the first $2,000 and the minimum stipend that a firefighter gets not be taxed, because they're already paying taxes. So with that, I tried to bullet point my testimony, which is about 9 pages, so I'll let you answer.
I thank you for taking the time to come up here today and advocate for this as well. Representative Lanoue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Captain Wasilek, thank you so much for coming up here today and testifying on this very important piece of legislation.
My pleasure.
You know, it's we've been putting this in for a few years now. The committee's been kind enough to raise it every year, give us a joint favorable. So be very, very nice to the chairman between now and the joint favorable deadline. You know, I think part of the problem, if I understand it right from the conversations we've had and others, other chiefs in the district is you get the stipend check. The volunteers are first responders, are the firefighters, the EMS, fire police. They're not employees per se. They're volunteers. So on this stipend check, they're a 1099 is pulled on them, which even makes it a more robust, more aggressive tax, where almost the entire check gets eviscerated through state and federal taxes. Did I pretty much sum that up?
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm curious, in your role as a captain of the fire department, as it relates to EMS, EMTs, the firefighters, the fire police, have you actually seen people drop out of fire service because if they get the stipend check, then the check essentially evaporates? It almost adds insult to injury, and you see people withdraw from service?
Yes, the volunteer fire service, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, the volunteer fire service is hurting, 100%. I don't see volunteerism 100% lasting in any fire department in the future, 100%. But however, we must focus on recruitment and retention. Recruitment and retention means we have to give them a reason to want to join, but we're also running into a problem with keeping them there. Now, as we started refocusing our recruitment on younger members, we started at the high schools. We're trying to pull them in through the high schools in order to volunteer, providing courses to them. I myself am the one that teaches the EMS courses in the fire department. I do the CMEs that now added more training that they have to do. So what's happening is they're joining, expecting, because one of the big things we put on there is you receive a stipend. Now, as the younger members, we all know, they're not looking at volunteering as much as what am I going to get out of the time that I'm putting into it. So they're actually joining and saying, I want my stipend, and they're keeping track of their percentages and calls that they go on. So they're saying, okay, I'm at my 20%. We're saying that's great, good job, now you got to keep going. But now they get that stipend check, and they've lost about, what, 30%? So like, whoa, where's my stipend? You said I was getting all this money. Well, yeah, you got to pay taxes again on top of what you've already paid. So we have to explain to them that you're here to volunteer. So now this would actually add on to retaining them once they're in as also a member.
Yep. Well, thank you for that. If we get this legislation done, we get across the finish line, get the governor's signature on this, do you think this will help with recruitment overall in your opinion?
100%.
Now, how about specifically our younger folks, late teens, early 20s? Do you think it will help with getting the next generation in the door?
It will help, 100%.
And in your experience, sort of there's that carrot. And then once they're in the door and they start experiencing what volunteerism is all about, what fire service is all about, EMS, fire police, saving lives, saving lives of neighbors, people in their community, helping people when they're at their worst. Does that tend to grow on the volunteer where they want to stay in service, they know they're making a difference,
Yeah, what we're finding is a lot of them join the volunteer ranks. They get the training, they catch the bug or the fire, if you will, of, hey, this is great, I'm helping, making a difference. They go take these classes, the trainings that are required, and they actually go on to being part-time per diem, or even a lot of cases, full-time firefighters. So not only is it helping the volunteer ranks, but it's also helping the full-time ranks later down the road. So, but the hardest part, honestly, is getting them in and keeping them there. And this stipend is, everybody loves money. It's, won't lie about it, who doesn't like money? They're going to say, hey, I've got this money now I can do something with it. And
yeah. A couple of years back, when we got this bill out of public safety, it took a stop in finance because we are rewriting state tax law. There was a report from OFA that it was estimated that the state would lose $175,000 in revenue from these volunteer stipend checks. We may see it go around 200,000, who knows, if this bill passes. So some of the pushback that was received was the state's going to lose revenue. And with a tight budget year, why should we do this? What would be your response to that?
You're losing firefighters. You're losing people that go to your houses and help you. You're losing people that go and assist you with EMS. You're losing people that are willing to volunteer their time to go do this. So one of the largest things that I would also go back to is every community now, if they don't have the volunteers, you look at some towns, $300,000 just to have 2 firefighters in the firehouse Monday through Friday, during the day only. $300,000, and it's gonna go up. So now you add that on top of, that does not meet the minimum requirement of a 2-and-2-out rule in the National Fire Protection Administration. You have to have minimum of 2 in the building and 2 outside the building if you're gonna fight a fire without somebody's life in jeopardy.
So to do this right, you would need 4 full-time firefighters per shift.
If you're going to follow the standard.
Okay. So what I'm hearing here is that's going to cost money. You get to have.
We're looking at $1 million minimum just to have somebody Monday through Friday during the day.
Okay. So essentially, I would imagine property taxes. We already have a property tax crisis in our state. This would exacerbate that.
Well, exacerbate it tenfold. Not only that, but you're looking at the towns that cannot afford to have any part-times right now. They're fighting over how many pieces of toilet paper to buy at the budget right now, never mind how many supplementing of firefighters to volunteer for the volunteer staff. So now you're gonna have to go back and say, you know, we couldn't afford the toilet paper in town hall, but we're gonna put $1 million on the budget to have firefighters because we don't wanna give another $60,000 to the fire department for a stipend.
Yeah, and again, I think you testified in Griswold and Jewett City, those 2 departments, $60,000 over 45 different volunteers. So we're talking, my math is around $1,300 for 900 hours worth of work, volunteerism a year. Nobody's got rich on this. I mean, we're talking what, $1.50 or less a call. I think it's well worth it. This is a small thank you. Nobody's got rich on this, and this is, I think, a very good tool in your toolbox to make sure you guys remain the best of the community. And you're some of the best among us, some of the finest among us. There's been some pretty hairy calls, and
Yes.
I can testify to that. In town, as there is throughout the state, I saw 22,000 out of 27,000 firefighters in our state are volunteer.
Correct.
That's a huge number. We need to do everything we can to preserve them, get the next generation involved. Thank you so much for your testimony. I obviously wholeheartedly support this bill, and thank you for your work on
Great.
this, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, nothing further.
Thank you. And you certainly don't have to convince me for the merits of the bill. So, other questions from members of the committee? Go ahead, Mr. DiGabrio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Captain, for coming in today. And
My pleasure.
And Representative. Hazmat trained in your department.
Yes.
You have folks that are awareness, or can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, hazardous materials awareness is required to even get on the fire truck. So it's a requirement that I personally can say is fulfilled because I teach it at the station, as well as with another officer in the department. So, but not only are they hazmat awareness, but they're also operationally trained, which is a requirement to go out and do certain things, as you know, for defensive, dam dike divert. So we also provide that in the department as well. We do not have technician. I'm a technician myself, but I got that in another department. So we stop at the operational level, which will start the first step before the technicians arrive on a regional level.
And there's significant training with that, as I was on the emergency response group in Deep, right?
Perfect,
For
yeah.
a number of years. So there's, I just wanted to mention that there's a whole array of training that's required for those qualifications. So thank you for coming in. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee? Hearing none, thank you again for making the trip all the way up here. So we
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. So.